Welcome to the You're Not Crazy podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in healing from narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way. You can connect with Jessica and find additional resources, content, and coaching at emotionalabusecoach.com.
Before we begin, I just want to make a quick note. At the end of this episode, I spend the last 4 minutes walking through the way people work with me and where to find resources, my links, and my courses. If you are a returning listener or are already a client, you can absolutely skip that part. If you're new or trying to figure out what kind of support you need, it's there for you. It's the last 4 minutes. Thank you so much for being here. I remember thinking that there was something really unsettling about the way my ex would turn on me, I guess. He'd go from warm and loving to cold and not even mean. It was more like punishing in a moment. And 1 minute it was like I was being showered with like love and affection and care. And the next honestly, it was like over the top. It was like, I remember texting a friend and asking if it was normal for somebody to tell you that they love you 18 times in a morning, like in text, like every third message was, I love you. And I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I was like not able to receive it. I mean, and that's what he eventually ended up saying, but that wasn't it. It was like, it was a lot. Because then at the next minute, and especially if I needed something for myself, which was a lot of the time, it was an inconvenience and it was a problem. And I was somebody he had to protect himself from. And so it would go from like this like overtly warm to this very, very cold. And I kept asking myself, like, what is going on here? Like, I don't understand. I did not understand what I was doing to cause it. And that's how I thought about it, of like, and I kept trying to get him in the gray. I remember saying that. I remember being like, just because I didn't respond to the I love you text doesn't mean I don't love you. You asked me 13 things and I said I love you 3 times. And I responded to the one that was most urgent, which is like, what time are we meeting for this? But nothing I said went anywhere. And like, now I have such a different lens from what I thought then. But I kept asking myself, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Can he just not live in gray area? But now, years later, what I know is that it was splitting. And splitting isn't just an emotional reaction. It's also a manipulation tool. And in this case, it was used to make me feel destabilized, to be doubting myself, and really to ensure that I was always working to somehow regain his approval, which was the baseline that he wanted. And it wasn't just that he was dysregulated. It was like, this was a control mechanism, because the abandonment wound in him was so large that me not saying I love you meant that I hated him. And I used to feel, and I wrote this in my journal so many times, that there's no amount of validation I can give this person for them to understand and accept that, like, I care. And I did not want to be a validation system. I wanted to be a person. And so I remember the first time it happened, we were talking, I think we were laughing. It was a normal conversation. And then suddenly his energy just shifted and his face changed. And I felt like I lost him in an instant. And I like remember being like, what happened? Like, why did he shut down? Come back. I thought it was a trauma response. I didn't know what I said or done, but like the warmth was gone immediately. And I asked him if something was wrong, and he sighed, looked away, and said, forget it. And my brain said, okay, you're in trouble. I asked him what happened, and it didn't matter how gently I approached him or how carefully I tried to navigate it, because he already shifted, and I was on the bad side of his mind now. And once I was there, nothing I did would be right until his internal validation system was back to where he wanted it to be. And the weight of silence really settled in. And the more and more that this happened, I would question myself even more, thinking, what did I do? How do I fix this? The moment that I started chasing him, the game was already rigged against me. And it didn't happen just once. This would happen over and over again. And until I began to see it, I just acted within it. One moment, he was the person that I knew him to be, and he acted that way towards me, like he adored me or admired me. I would get, like, he would tell me constantly, I can't live without you. And the next, I was this burden or a source of stress or activating his trauma. And every time he split, I was the one left scrambling, trying to pull things together. Splitting is a psychological defense mechanism. The clinical definition of this won't prepare you for what it actually feels like to be on the receiving end of it. It is most commonly associated with borderline personality disorder, BPD, though it shows up across a range of personality disorders and high conflict relational patterns. Splitting is the inability to hold two contradictory truths about a person at the same time. The world is either good or bad, safe or dangerous, worthy of love or deserving of punishment. There is no middle and no nuance. There's no, I care about you and I'm frustrated with you. There's only one or the other, and the switch can flip without a warning. And for the person doing the splitting, it's a way of managing overwhelming emotions for them. Their brain is unable to tolerate ambivalence, forces everything into this binary, and it's a survival mechanism, one that likely developed early for them. And I say that not to excuse it, but to understand its origins. This isn't something that they are necessarily choosing to be cruel. It's someone whose nervous system was wired long before, and they categorize people as that they love as either saviors or threats. But like I said, I don't say that to excuse the behavior. I say that to point to an origin. And I also say that adults are responsible for understanding what is going on for themselves and seeking the proper support and help if they're having maladaptive behaviors, just in the same way that somebody on the receiving end of this may, like, there's some people that would, like, this would put them into a deep codependent relationship. There's others that would put this in a deep depression. We all are responsible for our own mental health. And for me, especially, and I'll continue on, I told him he was doing this. Like, when we got together, I was doing this work. And so I said, this is what's happening. I'm telling you because you care. I don't think you know you're doing it. And at the first 3 minutes of it, he listened. And the remaining 7 was how I'm wrong and how it's me and how he's not doing that despite all the evidence. But do I think he took that information, went to his therapist and said, this is what's going on? No, I think he went to his therapist and said, this is what she said. Because when you're being split on, it's one of the most destabilizing experiences that you can have. Like, it's really difficult in a relationship because one day you are that safe, cherished, needed person, and then it shifts and you don't know what or when. You don't know if the warmth is going to come back, but now you're on the other side of this wall that wasn't there a moment ago. It makes you question your perception of reality because you were just there in warmth and now you're in the cold. And there's no map that explains how you got from one to the other. So you do what any other reasonable person does when they've lost their footing and you reach back out. You try and find the moment you slipped. You replay conversations in your head. You soften your tone. You make yourself smaller and smaller and try and become a version of yourself that I guess the other person can, like, tolerate. But because the game is actually to get you to engage, the game is to fill their internal validation system. The game does not stop. And if you read anything about partners with BPD, they are being split on all the time. It's one of the most maddening things. It's also where you can identify what's going on and see it pretty clearly. And I think the damage here and the damage in the cycle is not necessarily in the splitting itself, but in the reaching back out. Because in relationships where splitting is paired with manipulation, which is all of them, the split isn't an emotional event happening inside the other person. It becomes this mechanism of control. The coldness isn't a symptom of what's going on is actually the punishment. And the cycle it creates is clear. You feel warm and suddenly you don't. And your only instinct is to get back to safety. You would do almost anything to get back to safety, especially when you don't know what's going on. So you shrink, you apologize for things you didn't do, and you stop saying things because true things sometimes become the thing that trigger the switch. So over time, you stop being yourself entirely and become a person whose primary organizing principle is managing somebody else's emotional state. And that's what splitting does to you when it's used as a weapon. It doesn't make the relationship unstable. It restructures who you are inside of the relationship. I know this because I lived it. And I've also obviously worked with a lot of people that have gone through this, but looking at the pattern, which is something I come back to a lot, is what helped me begin to separate and break free and see clearly. And so I'm going to walk you through what this looks like, because the scariest thing for me is being in a relationship and not knowing that all the manipulation is happening. So that way, because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to help you not see it clearly. And so I'm going to walk you through this pattern. First, there would be idealization to devaluation. And so he'd go from praising me to punishing me over nothing. One day I was the best communicator, the most understanding person in life. The next I was the problem, the source of all his stress, and the one making things difficult. My worth in his eyes could vanish or change in an instant, but when it was on, it was so large that I couldn't even fill that for myself. But when it was bad, he would put all this responsibility on me that was like not mine to fix. He literally said to me once, like, if you want to be with me, you need to take my version of what love is, and like that needs to be your version. And I was like, absolutely not. There was also extreme emotional shifts. One moment he was engaged and affectionate, the next he was cold and distant. I never saw it coming because it could be in an instant. Like there was this one time I remember going on a walk and like he was like, you seem like you're still bothered by that thing yesterday. I want to talk about it. I could tell you're upset. And at this point, this was like when I was trying to get out, I was like, don't bring it up. Don't say anything in my head. Like, I'm not going to bring it up. What's the point? There's no point. He doesn't hear anything. And then I finally said, yeah, yesterday was a lot and I'm carrying the emotion of that. And right now, all I know is that I feel tired. I'm exhausted. I'm so tired of this cycle. And it went directly to a shutdown. All of the coaching me to speak went extremely to the other side. No warning, no explanation, got silent, switch-rolled, and then left me scrambling to figure out what I did wrong. And of course, now, hindsight, what I did wrong was speaking up after I was coached for 5 minutes to speak up by him. So it makes you not want to say anything. You can see how this ends up being very controlling. There was also a pattern of refusal to repair ever, which left me in this like emotional limbo, but also left him in emotional limbo. And so instead of working through an issue, he would disappear, making me feel like I was the one ruining everything. But if I ever disappeared, as in like turned off my phone because he wouldn't stop texting me, I was the worst human in the world. So he wouldn't respond to my messages for hours or days. And when he finally did, he would dismiss my concerns, make me feel like I was overreacting. But my distress wasn't acknowledged. It was weaponized against me. And I was always made to be the quote unquote bad one. When he was in his idealization phase, I was somebody who was like the best thing that was ever in his life. When he flipped, I was suddenly too difficult. I had too many boundaries. And if I tried to express hurt over something and name it, I thought about every single freaking way to bring something up, he would twist it. The problem isn't what I did. The problem is your perception of it. That's a direct quote from a text message that I was sent. The problem isn't what I did. The problem is your perception of it. That is gaslighting. He would also turn his emotional dysregulation into my problem. When he withdrew or became cruel, it was never his fault. It was mine. I was the one who had to fix it. If I needed comfort, he suddenly became the victim. If I was upset, I was making the big deal out of nothing. He could be passive-aggressive, cold, and punishing, but I was expected to smooth it over every single time. This cycle was designed to keep me in a constant state of self-doubt and submission, which, if you know me, submission is really not my jam. Self-doubt, absolutely my jam. But submission, absolutely not. I mean, there's a reason I have clients that come to me from religious backgrounds that want to talk about that, being with somebody who is not part of a organized religion. The cycle of control was clear. He created an emotional high. I felt safe, loved, needed, and then suddenly it would be devalued. I was difficult, exhausting, impossible, and he punished me with silence or even indifference. There was no accountability ever. He just rewrote the reality. And if I tried to get clarity, I was irrational. The most painful part, the realization that nothing I could have done would have changed this, came way after I left the relationship. I didn't cause his splitting. I didn't make him turn on me. This was always going to happen because this is who this is. And one of the most helpful things is reading other people write about this in forums, because it really makes you feel like you're not crazy, because the same exact pattern happens. And the most powerful thing you can do when this is going on is detaching. The second I stopped chasing his approval, which in my mind at that time I called boundaries, is also the second I stopped believing I had to prove my worth to him at all. And it took a while to untangle from that damage, but I can share now some things that I learned in hindsight. One, that people do this, and that it is crazy to me that we don't learn about these behaviors earlier on when we're learning about triangles and insert other math thing we learned about that's not important now. It's also crazy to me that there's not a word for pathological love abuse, because so many people experience this. We think we're crazy. We end up anxious and depressed and hypervigilant and with PTSD, and there's no place to go 90% of the time other than places like this. But what I've learned now, years later in time, is that I don't want my worth to be tied to somebody's instability. I don't want to prove that I am good to somebody constantly who tells me how amazing I am, then the next moment says that I'm not. Silence is an answer. And when somebody withdraws that to punish me, I don't have to chase them. I'm not going to. I didn't get closure at all from this relationship. I had to give it all to myself. Closure would have only been if I admitted that every single thing I ever thought was wrong. But I wouldn't have felt closure, because I would have just abandoned myself. So it would have never been closure. If you have been through something similar, I guess I want to say what I wish somebody told me, that this is a problem. Like, you're not the problem. You didn't deserve to go through this just because somebody else couldn't handle their own emotions. And love doesn't have to feel this way. And I know for myself, I'd rather not feel it at all than to feel all of this instability. One of the hardest things is thinking like, well, he's just going to go do this to someone else. I remember thinking that all the time, and that's true. And I just had to tell myself, he'll have to keep doing this to someone else, because I get to walk away and be free, but he's not, because he still doesn't think that it is a problem. And I guarantee you today, he still doesn't think that it's a problem at all. So I hope that this was helpful. I don't address splitting specifically in Unhooked, my private podcast, but I address the cycle. And if splitting is part of the cycle, you can use the resources in Unhooked to help drive you through the cycle that's happening and thinking about how you can interrupt it. Because the interrupting isn't for them, it's absolutely for you. I really hope that this was helpful. If you need support, you can always reach out to me at emotionalabusecoach.com or find me on Substack, where I've been writing a lot about pathological love abuse. So that is the Sandra Brown way to say abuse by partners with cluster B disorders. So I invite you to go there. The link is in the show notes if that is helpful to you. If this episode resonated and you're realizing that what you're dealing with isn't just stress or miscommunication, there are ways to get support that don't minimize what you're experiencing. I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes telling you about my offerings, because at the core of my business is one-on-one coaching. The podcast is something that I do because I do like being able to help a broader audience. But the truth is that the core of my work is really coaching and providing other offerings so that people can begin to heal. At the center of everything I do is one-on-one coaching. That's where I slow things down, listen closely, and help you make sense of what's happening in your specific situation. It's not a template. It's not just based on theories, but it's really focused on your real life. Some people start with a one-time validation call. That is a single focus session where we look at one specific situation or pattern that you're struggling with. And the goal isn't to fix your life or push you into decisions. It's to help you name what's happening, put it into context of reality, help you notice where you are in it, and offer some feedback and tools to how to navigate it. I also offer an intro call. The intro call used to be called the clarity call, and it's a short call where you can share what's going on for you, and I can explain how I work and whether I'm the right fit for your situation. There's no obligation to continue after that. It's simply a way for us to get on the same page before moving forward. For people who need ongoing support, I offer weekly or biweekly coaching. This is especially helpful if you're navigating emotional abuse, trauma bond, high conflict divorce, or custody and co-parenting with a difficult or controlling person. Ongoing work allows us to track patterns over time, stay anchored when things escalate, and make decisions in a way that protects your nervous system and your long-term stability. All of my coaching options can be found on my websites, emotionalabusecoach.com and highconflictdivorcecoaching.com. Both links are available in the show notes of this episode. In addition to one-on-one coaching, I offer several self-paced courses and programs. They're called Divorcing a Narcissist 101, How to Document for Family Court, the Emotional Abuse Breakthrough Course, Setting Boundaries with a Narcissist, and Unhooked, which is my program and private podcast that walks you through the full cycle of abuse, helps you map it out in your relationship, and shows you how to begin to break free from the trauma bond. I also write on Substack, where I explore topics like trauma bonding, emotional abuse, coercive control, high conflict divorce, and the cluster B dynamics. There's a free option and a paid membership that offers deeper dives, Q&As, and additional resources. Everything that I do and everything that I build is around one core truth and message that you're not crazy, you shouldn't feel crazy, and that even though I can see patterns in what you're experiencing, it doesn't mean that it's normal. It's not healthy. My work is really about helping you understand what's happening and begin to trust yourself again. All of the links that I shared are in my show notes, and I really appreciate you being here.